All right, guys, we're here from the Senior Bowl after day one of practice, a really eventful day of practice, a beautiful day here in Mobile, Alabama. I'm Andrew Gribble, this is Dustin Fox, and Dustin, I'm just going to ask you right away, what stood out to you about what you saw from the Browns coaching staff and the players they were working with the South team today?
Well, I just think it was interesting to see how college players respond to pro coaching and vice versa, because you're talking about Hugh Jackson dealing with college kids and how these guys, they get out there and they practice, and they're not going to be quite as tough on them, and they've only been dealing with them for a couple weeks. You'll maybe hear some people say, well, they're dealing with them like with kid gloves, right? And that's sometimes how you have to do it. And I'm sure it's probably a lot of fun for Coach Jackson and Greg Williams and some of these guys on the staff to get an opportunity to work with a lot of these young players. And in fact, some of these guys were just playing college football 2 weeks ago in the national championship game. So it seemed as though everyone was kind of excited. It's a different feel, I'm sure, than most practices.
Yeah, there was a moment early on in practice where I maybe saw some shell shock from particularly the wide receivers out there who really weren't ready for the Al Saunders experience. I think they weren't able to have, just like him on their hands-on working with him. And he told one player, he's like, "You're faster than that. Do better than that." And they responded with that.
You look at Al Saunders, you would not believe, like if you just saw him walk down the street, you would not believe this guy has the energy that he has. And I think you're right. I think he, at times, had some of the players taken a little bit aback because he was getting after it. I mean, it was fun watching the wide receivers respond to him because he's out there. I mean, he's got his pant legs rolled up and he's telling the players where to go and he's yelling at them, and they're it's awesome. I mean, he's an energetic guy who's been around and has a lot of knowledge, and these players should love the opportunity to be able to work with a guy like Al Saunders.
Yeah, and it was kind of a feeling out period, I think, in that first practice. I mean, just kind of learning how to practice, learning how to be with each other. But the intensity was ratcheted up as the practice got going, and I think the coaches had a lot to do with it. And there was even a moment in the practice where Hugh Jackson himself had to break up a fight between an offensive lineman and defensive lineman from LSU and Tulane. I mean, it was aggressive, and I think those one-on-one offensive lineman, defensive lineman drills, those kind of stole the show today because it's kind of mano-y-mano and seeing who's going to win out. And I think those are big pressure-packed moments for those players because they know who's evaluating.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, you're in practice here, the guys had shorts on, they're not tackling to the ground, so the most competitive drills are always going to be the one-on-one opportunities. So whether it's an offensive lineman going up against a pass rusher or a defensive back working in a one-on-one drill against a wide receiver, those are the fun things to watch. And if you always notice in practice here at the Senior Bowl or some of these other All-Star games, whenever the one-on-one drills start, you see people flock over to those areas because they want to get an up-close look at what's going on. And I'm watching the DBs and wide receivers because that's what I love to see. And I know you were down there watching some of those guys, the pass rushers working against the tackles. And those are tough drills. You think about what you're doing. You're going up against one of the top college players at the opposite position, and you've got all these coaches and all these scouts watching and talking about what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of pressure. It's a pressure-packed situation. But I remember some of those drills used to thrive. I used to love those opportunities to go one-on-one.
Yeah, and a lot of the buzz on the quarterback position has kind of died down ever since Deshaun Watson said he wasn't going to be here. Hugh Jackson, though, he said he was pleasantly surprised, I guess, by Josh Dobbs, a Tennessee quarterback who seemed like he was quarterback with the Volunteers forever. Had a pretty good senior season. He's mobile. He's got a big arm, but there's a lot of question marks about him. But he liked his arm strength, and he liked some of the things he saw to Davis Webb, Antonio Pipkin. I think as the week goes on, maybe we'll kind of see who emerges. But I think Dobbs in the pro setting with the offense he ran in college, I think he was the most comfortable out there.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I was surprised by him. I thought he had a nice release, quick release. The ball seemed to spin a little bit better than the other quarterbacks, and that's different. I mean, we're talking about a different football as opposed to the college ball, so that is unique. Pipkin, I thought, struggled a little bit today, and I thought he would. I mean, he's a Division II kid here, getting an opportunity to go against some of the best competition in the entire country. I thought Davis Webb had some good throws. From all accounts, though, the tweets that we were seeing from the North practice were that there may be some better quarterback prospects there, and we'll see that tomorrow.
Yeah, the guy that probably is the top prospect of that group is Nathan Peterman, a former Tennessee quarterback who transferred to Pitt, really turned his career around, and he really had a good career at the end of his time at Pitt, and has emerged as maybe the highest pick guy in this Senior Bowl, but probably still like a fourth round, day three kind of
maybe
prospect.
Not a starter,
but,
right? I mean,
yeah, but you look back at these last few games, I mean, there's always a guy that maybe emerges and becomes a decent NFL quarterback. Dak Prescott last year, clearly was the big story last year. A couple years ago, Jimmy Garoppolo was not even invited to this game originally, was a late addition when someone had to pull out, and then all of a sudden he becomes a second-round pick. So one of these guys might not be a big name now, but they could be eventually after some coaches get some eyes on him, and maybe he's going to be available on day 3, and I can pick him, and he's my sleeper guy going forward.
Anybody else jump out at you today?
Yeah, I think the South, we talked about it yesterday, the tight end position is as good as it's been here in years, and I think as good of a draft class of tight ends in maybe 5 or 6 years. I think it's been kind of a weak position in the draft the last couple of years, but O.J. Howard is probably clearly the top-ranked player overall here. He had a good day, and the guy I really like is Evan Ingram from Ole Miss as well. He's a bigger, it just looks like a big receiver, and I think they look comfortable, and I think we saw Hugh Jackson drawing up plays to get the ball to his playmakers, because I think the strength of this South team, if they're trying to just win the game, is going to be their tight ends and probably their running back in Donald Pumphrey from San Diego State.
Yeah, there were a couple kids that jumped out to me. I was spending a lot of time watching the secondary and watching the wide receivers. I'm a big fan of Ryan Switzer, the little dude from North Carolina, about 5'8", 190 pounds, really good punt returner. Thought he shined. I think he'll be a really good slot receiver in the pros. And there's a kid from Grambling who I've never heard of until today. Big physical guy who was making some plays going up against some of the top corners in the entire country. I believe the kid's name is Travion White from LSU. Did I get the name right?
Yeah, I think I think it might be Tredarius.
Tredarius White, yeah. So he looked great in some of his drills, defensive back drills, working some off coverage there. So I'm with you. There's a kid from Villanova, and we're not even going to try to pronounce his name.
The last name, it's a very hard name, but he to pronounce. But he was
Tano Pasanier or something like that.
Yeah, I saw a lot of guys tweeting about him at the weigh-in today.
Just
impressive physically from what he looks like, and I think this is. We talked about Antonio Pipkin. These guys from these small schools, I feel like they come to these games with a little bit of edge to them. It always seems like these smaller school guys kind of stand out a little more because they're on the big stage. And I think, for one, the offensive lineman Forrest Lamp, he's going to be probably a first-round pick. He stood out, I thought, and an offensive lineman that a lot of Alabama players this year said was the best offensive lineman they faced all year.
Western Kentucky.
Yeah, in Western Kentucky. So I think he held his own, but it was ultimately a day. If you're looking offensive and defensive line dominated. You heard Brown's offensive line coach Bob Wiley talk to his guys afterwards, say, we got to be better tomorrow, be better tomorrow. But with the way that the team is built, the South is loaded at defensive linemen, not a lot of big names on that offensive line.
No, I'll be excited to see the North tomorrow. There's a couple kids I want to see. Cooper Kupp, big receiver from Eastern Washington.
Yeah.
Want to get a chance to see him. They said that the matchup between him and Jordan Lewis, the DB from Michigan, was a lot of fun today.
Yeah, it'll be a good day of practice. I think day 2 is always a good day. The guys are a little more comfortable. The nerves are gone. So we'll be watching that, and we'll be back here tomorrow to wrap that up and give you a better even synopsis of what is happening here in Mobile.